The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, filled with smoke, broken ships, and the smell of burning metal. Pieces of alien war machines floated across the ruined ground, sparks dancing in the cold air. The sky was black from the battle just hours ago, and the ground was littered with both human and alien bodies. Among the ruins, one man still moved. His name was Daniel, a human soldier left behind after his unit was destroyed. His armor was cracked, his rifle was broken, and blood ran down his arm, but his eyes still burned with defiance. He leaned on a piece of broken steel, refusing to fall, refusing to die quietly. From the other side of the field came a line of alien warriors, tall and armored in shining plates that glowed faintly with blue light. They marched with perfect order, their weapons ready. Their leader walked in front, towering above them. Her armor was heavier, darker, marked with golden edges that showed her rank. She was the princess of the Clithari Empire, feared across dozens of worlds. Soldiers whispered that she had never been defeated. She was called the Iron Flame, and wherever she walked, enemies surrendered before she even raised her blade. She stopped when she saw him, a single human, broken but still standing. Her visor hid her face, but her voice was cold. Human, you are the last one alive here, Neil, and your end will be quick. Daniel coughed, blood staining his lips, but he laughed. It was not the laugh of a coward, but of someone who had nothing left to lose. You'll have to make me kneel, he said. His voice was weak, yet it carried across the silent field. The alien soldiers shifted uneasily. They had fought humans before, but this one refused to fear them. The princess studied him for a long moment. Her people had won the battle, but something about this man pulled her attention. She stepped closer, her armored boots striking the ground like thunder. The other soldiers stayed behind. Watching with suspicion, Daniel lifted his head, forcing himself to stand straight even as pain cut through his body. If you want me to kneel, you'll have to push me down yourself, he whispered. His words were not loud, but the soldiers heard them, and whispers ran through the ranks. The princess stopped only a few steps away from him. For a long breath, no one moved. The smoke curled around them like a veil, and the stars above shone faintly through the dark sky. Then slowly she raised her hands to her helmet. The soldiers gasped, for no Clithari warrior removed their armor in front of an enemy. It was against every rule, every code, yet she did it. The hiss of the locks echoed in the silence. The helmet lifted away, and for the first time her face was seen. She was not a machine, not a faceless warrior, but a woman. Her skin was pale silver with faint glowing lines running like rivers across her cheeks. Her eyes were bright gold, fierce yet filled with something none of her soldiers expected. Doubt. A scar crossed her left temple. Proof of battles survived. Proof of wounds carried alone. Daniel stared. His breath caught in his throat. He had expected death, not this. She was beautiful, yes, but there was more. Behind her fierce eyes was pain. The kind of pain only someone who had carried too much could understand. The soldiers looked at one another in disbelief. Some lowered their weapons slightly, confused by their leader's choice. Removing her armor was not surrender, but it was dangerous. It meant trust, vulnerability, and in front of a human. It was unthinkable, the princess spoke again, but her voice was softer now. Why do you stand when you should fall? Why do you face me with broken arms and empty hands? Daniel's lips trembled, but he forced a smile. Because I'm human, and humans don't kneel to anyone. The silence grew deeper. Every soldier heard those words, and every heart felt the weight of them. Even the stars above seemed to listen. The battlefield was no longer just a place of broken bodies. It had become the beginning of something far greater. The princess lowered her helmet to the ground. Her golden eyes locked on his for the first time in her life. She felt something stir inside her chest. It was not duty, not pride, but something dangerous. Something her empire had never taught her. And in that moment, before her army and before the last human on that field, she crossed a line that would change the stars forever. The battlefield's silence was broken, not by guns, not by war cries, but by the sound of armor falling away. The soldiers stood frozen, none daring to move. The princess had removed her helmet, and the battlefield felt colder, as if even the stars held their breath. A warrior's face was sacred, hidden always behind metal and glass. Yet now her face was open to the human. To her enemy, Daniel stared, his body weak but his mind racing. He had seen death before, but never something like this. The glow of her golden eyes cut through the smoke, and the scar that crossed her temple told a story of battles and pain. She was not just an untouchable figure in armor. She was flesh, blood, and something he could almost call human. The alien soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some muttered words in their sharp tongue, worried and afraid. To them, this act was not strength but betrayal. A leader was supposed to be untouchable, a symbol of power, but here was their princess, showing her face before a human who should already be dead. The princess's name was Serenia, though few outside her people knew it. To most, she was only the Iron Flame, a title carved in fear, but now with her face revealed, Serenia felt the weight of her own choice. Why had she done it? She asked herself silently. Why in front of him? Daniel tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He pressed a hand to his ribs, forcing himself to stand taller. His eyes met hers and didn't look away. So, this is the face behind the armor, he whispered. His words were broken, but his courage was whole. For a moment, Serenia said nothing. Her golden eyes studied him, searching for weakness. Yet what she found was something else. Even wounded, even near death, he did not bow. He did not tremble like others had. He only looked at her as if she was not a monster, but a person. Her soldiers stepped forward. Their weapons raised, one barked out in anger. My princess, this is shame. You cannot show your face to prey. He is nothing, but Serenia raised a hand. And silence fell again. Her gaze never left Daniel. Her voice carried like fire across the ruined ground. If he is nothing, then why does he still stand when all others have fallen? The soldiers had no answer. They lowered their heads, though unease still flickered in their eyes. Daniel let out a weak laugh. Maybe. Because humans are too stubborn to know when to fall, he said. His lips curved into a smile despite the pain burning through his chest. Something strange stirred in Serenia's chest. She had fought across 100 worlds, faced warriors larger, faster, and stronger than this fragile human. Yet none of them had ever made her question her armor. None had made her curious, none had made her feel. The silence between them grew heavy again. Daniel felt his legs tremble, and his strength faltered. He nearly collapsed. But before he hit the ground, Serenia moved. Her armored hand caught his arm, holding him steady. Gasps echoed among her soldiers. Touching an enemy was forbidden, but Serenia did not care. She steadied him and looked down at him. Her voice softened, so low only he could hear. Why do you smile when you are dying? Daniel coughed and blood touched his chin. Because, if this is the end, I'd rather face it standing, looking at the truth, not hiding from it. His words pierced through her like a blade sharper than any weapon. He had called her truth. Her armor was her mask, her prison. Yet he looked at her face and saw something real. Serenia felt a rush of anger toward herself, toward her people, toward the endless war. But stronger than anger was something new. Something dangerous. She quickly released him and turned away, trying to hide what she felt. Her soldiers awaited her command, waiting for her to finish what should have been simple. Kill the last human. Claim victory. But Serenia's voice surprised even herself. Take him alive, she ordered. The soldiers hesitated. Some argued, he is broken, he is weak. He is not worth chains. But Serenia's tone turned sharp, and they obeyed. They bound Daniel, though carefully, as if fearing her wrath more than they hated him. As they dragged him toward the alien warship, Daniel looked back at her. His smile was faint, but it carried weight. She turned her face away, but the echo of that smile followed her, haunting her armor like a ghost. Later, in the quiet of her private chamber aboard the ship, Serenia sat alone, staring at her reflection without the helmet. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not by her empire, not by her soldiers, but by one wounded human who refused to kneel. And though she tried to push the thought away, deep inside she knew. Showing him her face had been no mistake. It had been a choice, a dangerous choice, and choices like that had the power to shake empires. The stars outside the viewport shimmered, silent witnesses to the beginning of something that would not stop. The face behind the armor was no longer a secret. It was the start of a story that would burn brighter than war itself. The alien warship hummed as it drifted through the void. Its halls glowed with pale blue light, and its walls were smooth as stone polished by centuries. Alien soldiers marched in silence, their armor clinking softly. Yet even with their perfect order, a shadow of unease followed them. All of them had seen their princess lower her armor before a human, and none could erase the memory. Daniel walked between them in chains. His hands were bound, his steps heavy. Every movement sent pain across his ribs, but his back stayed straight. He did not crawl, he did not beg, he walked like a soldier, and that burned more deeply in the hearts of his captors than any weapon could. They pushed him into a grand hall deep inside the ship. At its center stood a tall throne made of black steel and gold veins. The seat of power for Serenia, the Iron Flame. She sat there in full armor once again, her helmet replaced over her face. Her soldiers gathered in a circle, their voices sharp with whispers. The chamber's silence was broken by one of the alien generals. His voice carried anger. "Princess, end this creature now. His life has no worth, his blood is nothing. His existence is insult." Daniel coughed and raised his head. His chains rattled, but his spirit did not. "Funny," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "You needed a whole army to bring me down, and even now, you tremble because I still stand." Gasps rose among the aliens. The general's eyes blazed with rage. "You dare mock us, human," he shouted, stepping forward with his weapon drawn. But Serenia raised her hand and the general froze. Her golden eyes glowed through the thin slit of her visor as she studied the man in chains. Daniel looked back at her, his lips curved in a faint smile. "You can put me in chains, you can break my body, but you cannot make me kneel." Her soldiers hissed with fury, their sharp voices filled the hall. "Arrogance, arrogance," they cried. "Break him! Silence him." But Serenia did not speak at once. Instead, she rose slowly from her throne. The sound of her armored steps echoed like thunder in the chamber. She stopped before Daniel, taller, stronger, brighter than him. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she felt something rare. Something she had never found in all her battles. "Why?" she asked, her voice low but fierce. "Why do you not fear us? Why do you not kneel? Is your pride worth your life?" Daniel's body shook with weakness, but his voice held fire. "Because kneeling means I accept that I am less, and I am not less, not to you, not to your empire, not to anyone." The words cut through the silence like a blade. The alien soldiers stepped back as if struck. For them, defiance was madness. No one spoke to the Iron Flame this way. No one looked into her eyes with such fire. Serenia felt her chest tighten beneath her armor. His words were dangerous, yet she could not silence him. Something about his defiance awakened a storm inside her. Her soldiers were watching, waiting for her to crush him. But her voice betrayed her thoughts. "You speak like one who believes his kind can challenge empires," she said. Daniel smirked, his lip bleeding but his spirit unbroken. "We don't just believe it," he whispered. "We prove it every time someone like me refuses to kneel. We prove it." The chamber stirred with unrest. Some soldiers demanded his execution. Others whispered in fear. A single man, chained and broken, was shaking their belief in their own power. The general stepped forward again, his patience gone. "This insolence cannot continue, Princess. Allow me to cut out his tongue and end his defiance." But Serenia lifted her hand sharply. Her voice thundered, "No!" The hall fell silent again. Her golden gaze lingered on Daniel inside. She battled with her own thoughts. This was weakness, this was madness. Yet she could not deny the truth. His defiance was more powerful than any weapon she had ever carried. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his chains clinking. His voice dropped to a whisper meant for her alone. "You can kill me, Princess, but you will never forget that one human made you question your empire." Her breath caught inside her chest. His words were not just bold. They were dangerous because they were true. She could already feel the crack forming inside her. The crack between the warrior she was raised to be and the woman standing before this stubborn human. The soldiers waited for her judgment. The general's eyes burned with fury, but Serenia gave no order. She turned her back and walked toward her throne. Her voice was cold but carried a strange weight. "The human lives for now." Shock spread through the hall. Whispers rose like flames. Some spoke of betrayal, others of weakness. But Serenia ignored them. She sat back on her throne, her armor heavy, her heart heavier. Daniel was dragged back to his cell. His body screamed with pain, but inside he felt victory. He had not won a battle with guns or blades, but with defiance. He had forced the Iron Flame to make a choice. And he had seen the hesitation in her golden eyes. In the silence of the cell, Daniel leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. His lips curved into a tired smile. He had no weapon, no army, no chance of escape, yet somehow, he knew he had changed something. Something small, something fragile, but powerful enough to echo far beyond this warship. And in her throne room, Serenia sat with her helmet in her hands, staring at her reflection in the golden visor. For the first time, she wondered if her empire could truly be shaken. Not by fleets, not by armies, but by one human who refused to bow. The warship moved quietly through deep space, its engines glowing like blue stars in the dark. Inside the vast halls, the soldiers marched with order, but their voices were no longer loyal whispers. They murmured in shadows, their words sharp and heavy. The human had been spared, and to them, this was not victory but shame. Serenia walked the corridors with her helmet under one arm. Her soldiers bowed as she passed, but their eyes told another story. Doubt lingered in every glance, she felt it. Like knives pressed against her back, they no longer saw her only as the iron flame. Now they saw weakness, and weakness was dangerous. In the command chamber, the generals gathered around a long table of black steel. Holographic maps flickered above it, showing conquered systems and battlefronts. But their eyes did not focus on war. They focused on her, one general. His armor scarred and his face lined with age. Broke the silence. "My princess," the men whisper. They question why the human breathes, why you allowed him to speak in the great hall. "This is not the way of our people." Another leaned forward, his voice harsher. "Every empire watches us. If they see us falter, they will strike. This human must die if you will not order it. Then perhaps someone else must." The words were not only disrespectful, they were dangerous. Serenia's golden eyes burned as she stared across the table. Her voice cut like a blade. "Careful, General. You speak on the edge of treason." Silence fell. But the whispers did not stop. They only grew quieter, sharper. More than one pair of eyes flicked toward her crown crest on the table, as if imagining it in another's hands. Serenia left the chamber, her armor feeling heavier than ever. She walked through the halls until she reached a private balcony that opened to the stars. Alone, she let out a breath she had kept trapped inside her chest. The stars looked endless, but for the first time in her life, they did not bring her pride, they brought her questions. Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound, a voice carried from the lower decks. She followed it, silent as a shadow, until she reached a narrow corridor. There, hidden from the main halls, she heard her soldiers whispering. "The princess has changed," one said bitterly. A human stares into her eyes, and she trembles. "She betrayed our code," another hissed. "To show her face before prey, unforgivable. She is not fit to lead." "And yet," a third voice said carefully, "she is strong, stronger than any of us." "If she can bend, what does that say of the human?" "Perhaps he is more dangerous than we know." The whispers burned in Serenia's ears. Her fists clenched until her claws dug into her palms. She had always ruled with fear, with fire, but now doubt poisoned her army. Not because she lost a battle, but because she spared a man who would not kneel. That night she entered the holding cells alone. The guards stepped aside, unsure whether to salute or to fear her. Inside the dim chamber, Daniel sat chained against the wall, his face pale, his body weak, but his eyes still alive. When he saw her, he gave a small smile. "I wondered if you'd come." She stepped closer, her armor clicking softly. "You have broken more than chains." "Human," she said quietly. "You have broken trust. My soldiers whisper of betrayal. They question me. They question the empire itself." Daniel leaned his head back against the wall, his voice rough. "Maybe that's not betrayal. Maybe that's truth finally crawling out of the dark." Her eyes narrowed, golden fire glowing. "Truth is what keeps my people strong, and now you make me doubt that strength," he coughed, blood staining his lips, yet his smile never left. "No, I didn't make you doubt, Princess. You were already questioning. I just reminded you of what you already knew." For a long time she stood in silence, staring at him through the shadows. Her heart beat fast. Her hands trembled against her will. She hated his words, hated how they pierced deeper than any blade. But more than hate, she felt fear, fear not of him but of herself. Of the change inside her. Suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed outside. She turned sharply, her hand moving to her sword. The cell door cracked open, and two guards entered without permission. Their eyes glowed with rebellion. "My princess," one said, his tone bold. "This human poisons you. He must be destroyed now."
"If you will not give the order, then we will." The second soldier raised his weapon toward Daniel.
His finger tightened on the trigger. In that instant, Serenia moved. Her blade flashed with golden fire. The weapon fell to the floor in two pieces, sparks spraying across the cell. The soldiers froze as her voice thundered. "Touch him, and you will burn before the stars." Fear swept across their faces. They bowed quickly and fled the chamber, leaving behind the heavy silence of her choice. Daniel looked at her, his breathing shallow. You saved me again. Why? Serenia stood over him, her blade still glowing. Her voice was low, almost trembling. Because I cannot let them decide what is mine to choose. Her words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous for the first time. She admitted, not to him, not to her soldiers, but to herself, that protecting him was no longer duty or strategy. It was something far more reckless, far more personal. Outside, the whispers of betrayal grew louder. The generals sharpened their knives. The soldiers whispered of revolt. And deep in the heart of the warship, Serenia knew that the choice she had made tonight would not be forgiven. The Empire demanded loyalty, but her heart had already begun to betray it. The warship drifted through the stars like a silent predator, yet inside its metal heart, unrest grew with every passing hour. Soldiers whispered, generals plotted, and loyalty cracked like thin glass. Serenia felt the storm building, but her steps did not falter. She carried her doubts like hidden fire buried beneath her armor. That night, she went once more to the holding cells. Her guards tried to stop her, but one look from her golden eyes sent them back into silence. Daniel was there as always, chained, pale from hunger, but still sitting upright, still watching the world with steady eyes. His spirit had not broken, and somehow, that spirit pulled her closer each time she stood before him, her armor gleaming faintly in the dim light. For a moment she said nothing. Then her hands moved slowly to the locks across her chest. With a hiss, the plates released one by one. She let the heavy armor fall piece by piece, until she stood before him in only the simple dark cloth beneath. Daniel blinked in surprise, his lips curved into a faint smile. That's twice now, princess, he whispered. First your face, now your armor. You keep giving me reasons to believe you're not as cold as they say. Serenia's breath caught in her chest. She had removed her armor not just for him, but for herself. For too long it had been a cage, a mask that allowed her people to see only the warrior, not the woman now in this small room. She wanted to be seen, truly seen. Her voice trembled softly. You should not look at me this way, human. It is forbidden. Daniel leaned forward, his chains rattling. His voice was weak but steady. Then why do you keep letting me? Why do you keep showing me what no one else sees? Her golden eyes lowered. She remembered battles fought, victories won, blood spilled in her name. Yet none of it gave her peace, none of it gave her truth. Here, in the silence with a dying man, she felt more alive than she ever had on the throne. She sat down across from him, the cold floor beneath her knees. The Princess of Fire sat like an equal before her prisoner. Her voice dropped low. My people believe strength is armor. They believe power is fear. But when I wear this armor, I feel hollow. When I remove it, I feel free. Daniel's eyes softened. He nodded slowly. Maybe because armor hides more than flesh, it hides the truth. And sometimes the truth is stronger than any shield. Her chest tightened. His words pierced through her sharper than blades. She had been trained to never show weakness, never show scars, but now, her fingers touched the scar across her temple, tracing it lightly for the first time. She whispered the story. This scar was not earned in glory. It was a punishment. I failed once. My father marked me so I would never forget. Every day since I have worn armor so no one would see it. No one but you. Daniel swallowed hard. His voice cracked. Then I'm honored. Serenia. Her name from his lips sent a tremor through her heart. No soldier dared speak it, not even her generals. To them, she was only the Iron Flame, but he had spoken it softly, as if it belonged to her alone. For a long silence, they sat facing each other. The sound of engines thrummed through the walls like a heartbeat. Serenia's eyes locked on his, and in them she saw not fear, not hatred, but recognition, as if this fragile human could see the woman behind the warrior. But outside the chamber, the shadows had ears. 2 spies hid beyond the door, recording every word. Their eyes widened as they saw their princess without armor, sitting across from a human prisoner. When they slipped away into the corridors, they carried with them a story that would spread like fire through the ship. Serenia did not yet know she had been watched. She only felt the strange calm that came from being unmasked. She leaned closer, her voice soft as starlight. You will not live long in chains. Daniel, they will find a way to end you, and when they do, they will tear me down as well. Daniel's lips curved into a faint grin, even as his body trembled with pain. Then maybe it's time to stop being their Iron Flame. Maybe it's time to burn for something real. Her eyes widened. The words echoed in her chest. Burning away the walls she had built for the first time, She let herself smile. Not the smile of a ruler, not the smile of a warrior, but the fragile smile of someone who had finally been seen. The truth was no longer hidden, not behind steel, not behind titles. It lived in this small chamber, in the bond between a human who would not kneel and a princess who dared to unmask herself. And yet beyond the walls whispers already spread. The generals sharpened their voices into knives, the soldiers carried rumors like torches, and the empire that had never known weakness would soon be forced to face it. The unmasking of truth had begun, and it could not be undone. The whispers spread faster than light through the corridors of the warship, through the barracks and the control rooms. Soldiers whispered of their princess without armor, sitting across from the human. They spoke of betrayal, of weakness, of shame. By the time the generals gathered again, the story was no longer secret. It was fuel for revolt. Serenia stood at the center of the council chamber. Her golden eyes glowed, but inside her heart burned with unease. Around her, the generals spoke with voices sharp as blades. "You sit with prey as if he is your equal," one spat. "You disgrace our honor," growled another. "Your father would have cast you into the fire for less," hissed a third. Serenia let them speak. Their anger poured like poison, but she did not flinch. At last she raised her hand and silence fell. Her voice rang like thunder. "I am your princess. You dare to question me before the stars. You dare to call me weak." The generals lowered their heads, but not in loyalty, in calculation. In their eyes she saw no respect, only ambition. They wanted her throne, and the human had given them the excuse to take it. The oldest general stepped forward, his armor marked with decades of battle. "Then prove your strength, princess, prove it before all. Bring the human to the trial chamber. Let the empire see you burn away this shame." The soldiers shouted their approval. Their voices shook the walls. Yes, the trial, the fire. The truth. Daniel was dragged from his cell. His chains clattered against the floor. His body was weak, but his eyes still burned. When he entered the great trial chamber, he saw a ring of soldiers surrounding a pit of molten light. Flames rose from the cracks in the floor. The air shimmered with heat. Serenia stood above the pit, her armor restored, her blade burning with golden fire. For the first time since the battlefield, she looked like the iron flame again. Her people cheered her name, but her heart trembled. Daniel's voice broke the noise. "So this is it, princess. This is where you prove them right. Kill me, and you'll be their iron flame forever." His words struck her harder than any blow. Her soldiers expected blood. They expected her to strike him down and erase the whispers. But when she looked at him, all she saw was the man who had seen her scars, the man who had smiled at her truth. The general's voice thundered. "Do it, Serenia, burn him. Show the empire you have not fallen." The soldiers roared in agreement. Their armor clanged, their voices filled with fire. But Daniel did not bow. He raised his head and shouted over the noise. His voice cracked but carried across the chamber. "You think chains make me weak, you think fire will break me. But hear this, I am human, and humans don't kneel. Not to fire, not to empires, not to crowns." The chamber shook with silence. His words echoed through the walls like a storm. The soldiers froze, stunned by the audacity of a man in chains. Serenia's hand trembled on her blade. She felt every eye on her, waiting, demanding. The empire weighed heavy on her shoulders. But then Daniel's eyes met hers, steady, unbroken. His voice softened, meant only for her. "Do what you must, but know this, princess, if you kill me, you kill the only person who ever saw you." Her heart slammed in her chest. The generals leaned forward, eager for her choice. But Serenia dropped her blade. The golden fire flickered out. Her voice rang through the chamber. "No, I will not kill him," the soldiers gasped. The generals roared in fury. "Treason!" one shouted. "Weakness!" screamed another. But Serenia lifted her head, her golden eyes burning brighter than the fire pit itself. Strength is not killing. The weak strength is protecting what others fear. "And I will not kill him." The chamber erupted in chaos. Soldiers shouted, some in rage, others in confusion. The generals drew their weapons, their betrayal no longer whispered but clear. They would not accept a princess who chose a human over their code. Daniel's chains rattled as he was dragged back, but his lips curved into a faint smile. His words had reached her. He had turned her trial into her choice, and though the empire screamed for blood, she had chosen differently. The trial of fire had not burned the human. It had burned away her mask, for the first time in her life. Serenia was no longer just the Iron Flame. She was a woman who had chosen her truth, and the Empire would not forgive her for it. The trial chamber was chaos. Soldiers shouted, generals screamed, the fire pit roared, glowing like a sun trapped beneath the floor. The moment Serenia dropped her blade, the Empire itself cracked. The generals raised their weapons, their voices full of fury. "She has betrayed us," one thundered. "She chooses prey over honor," another spat. Soldiers pressed forward, their armor clanging, their loyalty was torn. Some still loyal to the Iron Flame, others ready to strike her down. Serenia stood tall, her golden eyes blazing. "Enough!" she roared. Her voice struck the chamber like lightning. "I am your princess. You call me weak. Yet none of you dared face me in the pit. You hide behind tradition. I stand in truth." Her soldiers hesitated. Their steps faltered, her presence still carried power. Still, the generals were relentless. The oldest pointed at Daniel, who stood in chains at the edge of the firelight. "This human is poison. As long as he lives, you are lost. End him or we end you." Daniel's chest heaved. His body was broken, but his spirit burned. He shouted over the crowd, his voice echoing like thunder. "You call me poison, but I am only a man who refused to kneel. If that frightens your empire, then maybe your empire was never strong." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some soldiers lowered their weapons, doubt flickering in their eyes. Others grew angrier. Ready to fight, Serenia turned, her armor glinting in the firelight. Her gaze locked on Daniel. His words struck her heart like iron. They were dangerous, but they were true. She reached up and unclasped the crest of her crown, the golden emblem that marked her as heir to the Empire. Slowly, she raised it high for all to see. Then, before the entire chamber, she dropped it into the flames. The crest melted, its gold dripping into the fire. The chamber shook with cries. Soldiers roared, some in rage, some in awe. The general shouted in fury, "Treason! She destroys herself." But Serenia's voice rose above them. "No, I free myself. From this day, I am not your Iron Flame, I am not your chains. I am not your weapon, I choose my path and I stand beside him." She pointed toward Daniel. The hall fell into silence. The sound of fire crackling filled the air. Daniel stared, his lips parting in shock. He had expected death, not this. His voice cracked as he whispered. Serenia, her soldiers began to divide. Some shouted their loyalty to her, others raised their weapons against her. The chamber erupted into battle. The clash of steel rang out, the Empire tearing itself apart. Amid the chaos, Serenia moved to Daniel. With a swing of her blade, she shattered his chains. The broken links fell into the fire pit. Sparks rising like stars, Daniel stumbled, but she caught him. Holding him steady, "Stand," she whispered. "Stand with me." He leaned on her, his strength nearly gone, but his eyes burned with the same defiance as always. Together they faced the storm. The generals charged, their weapons glowing. Serenia's blade met theirs with sparks. Each strike sent thunder through the chamber. Her soldiers fought around her, some defending her, others trying to kill her. The Empire's unity shattered in that single night. Daniel, though weak, raised a broken spear from the ground. He stood at her side, his breath ragged but his spirit unbroken. "If I fall," he said through clenched teeth, "I fall standing. Beside you." Her heart pounded at his words. For the first time in her life, she was not fighting for empire or for honor. She was fighting for herself, for truth, for him. The battle raged, but the sight of their princess fighting with a human at her side spread like wildfire. It broke the unshakable faith of the Empire. Soldiers hesitated, generals faltered. Even those who despised her could not deny the fire in her eyes, a fire brighter than any crown. At last, the oldest general fell, his weapon clattering to the floor. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. The survivors stared at Serenia, bruised and bloodied but unbroken. Standing with a human by her side, she lifted her blade high, her voice echoing like thunder across the chamber. "From this day the stars will remember I did not kneel to tradition. I did not kneel to fear. I chose my truth, and it has shaken your empire to its core." The soldiers lowered their weapons. Some bowed not to the Iron Flame but to Serenia, the woman who had dared to choose. Others fled, carrying the tale to distant worlds, a tale of a princess who broke her crown for a human. Daniel leaned against her, his strength failing, but his smile faint. "You've done it, you've shaken the stars." She looked at him, her golden eyes soft, and whispered, "No, Daniel, we did it, Outside, the warship drifted through the void, but its silence was no longer the silence of control. It was the silence of a storm before it spreads. Across the galaxy, thrones would tremble, fleets would stir, rulers would rage, for one act had shattered the order of empires. A princess had chosen a human, and that choice had shaken the stars.